right, one of the recent things I said I would talk about was dealing with curves, knives, and how I deal with all those curves on the different machines. Let's start out first with the 1x30. It's same for the 2x42 in this style. It wouldn't make a difference. I have some steak knives here that I just cleaned up. They're all polished up and they're ready to go, but they need to be sharpened. I'm going to start with this 120 grit. And when I'm talking a curve, so I'm going to show you slow here with nothing running what I'm talking about. So when I first place the knife and see where it's contacting everything. So this is set for 17 degrees on this particular sharpener. And I see that it's contacting right here. And I see this line. What I do visually is I'm trying to keep that same horizontal access line as I go across the blade. So as I get to the curve, I'm turning and I'm trying to keep as close to that exact same spot that this flat part of the blade is when I do my turn, which will give you an even bevel. Now, things to be aware of is often when knives have been sharpened before or when they're older, they're not always even on the blade. So I can already tell from here that this tip and curve is much thicker than the rest of this blade. So sometimes you might have to work a little bit more on those areas to thin them out and get it equal across the entire blade length. So it may also be common that sometimes it will look like it's not even, but it's usually due to the thickness of the blade. And once you get it thinned out to the same level of thickness across the blade, you'll see that that bevel will be nice and even all the way across. I hope that makes sense, but that's what happens. Okay. The other place where it's not uncommon to have different levels of thickness, and you can almost see it here, is back here in the heel. Often this is fatter and often the tip is fatter. Not uncommon. All right. So I'm going to get started here. I'm going to use my meta glasses here and see if I can record this from two angles, and we'll see which one's better for the video. But here we go. All right. So, you know what? I'll even draw on here just to give you a visual. This is something I do visually, but I know this belt is hitting right. I just do this visually. I don't actually draw because it wouldn't make much sense, right? But that's where this is hitting. So when I sharpen, I want to stay as close to that line as I possibly can. Now, granted, when it's moving, it means nothing once this thing's moving. This is just a visual aid to show you. I know it's hitting here. With my eye, try and say, okay, I want to stay on that imaginary line. And you can pick a point like on the side here, might be a good visual aid. Like you can use, just whatever some part of your platen or angle guide that will help you realize that. The other important things here, as I mentioned many times, variable speed. If you're trying to do this on an unconverted or non-variable speed or non-low speed grinder, it can be very difficult when you're operating at 3,500 RPMs or higher. I run mine at around 1,700 RPM. And when I get to that turn, you'll see I'm trying to keep that same line. And I have a burr. I can feel that burr the whole way. And now I'm going to do the same thing, going the other way. And I don't have a burr going this way yet. It's very close. All right, so I'm going to do, I can see it's a little thick here. There's a little reflection. So I'm going to do two more on this side. And then to keep it even, I'm going to do two more on the other. And sometimes you'll also see that little reflection being ground off. And that's also an indication that it's been apexed. That I know this is now apexed going both ways. And that's good. But you see how even now that bevel is? And that's what I mean by keeping that same line as you get into your turn. Now, depending on the angle of the knife, and some of them can be very difficult. Let me pull one out for you here. This isn't one I'm sharpening. It's a laser engraving job, but I just want to show you, what you can face sometimes. All right. So look at this baby. All right. So imagine if you're sharpening this, you're taking a huge turn. I mean, this knife is pretty much really two completely different angles. So we're talking almost a 90-degree turn, and that's why it's super important if you were sharpening this. Now, this is a brand new knife that just came in for laser engraving, so it doesn't really need to be sharpened. I just wanted to show you can get some really drastic curves in knives.